forgot to hit record.
We just got it. Thank you.
I got your back. I got your back because this has
Thank
happened
you.
multiple times. So know that mistakes are still being made. But I am excited to be with you guys. Kind of like perfect timing. I just got promoted to SVP of People at my current employer. It's been like a long time coming. Thank you. I'm really excited about it. I'm excited for like the new journey and all the things that if you know me, you know I always have a lot of ideas. And so I literally have documents and documents and documents of ideas and things that I want to do, specifically when it comes to like talent management, thinking about like the life cycle of an employee. So from before they even apply. So I don't even think it starts when they apply. It starts with what do they know about your employer brand. So from employer branding to offboarding, and it also ends with employer branding because when they leave, they are also either advocates for you or they are detractors. So thinking about the whole life cycle, and I think employer branding is such a big part of the talent strategy that a lot of people, myself included, missed before. Because before I had somebody that owned employer branding, I literally like it was my job. Like it was split between like four different people, and I don't know that it could have been as effective because it was split up. So I'm excited to talk about all things talent, strategy, all that good stuff.
Amazing. And big congratulations to you. That's huge. That's awesome. So, what does it mean to be an influential leader?
Yeah, let me see. I think for me, when I think of influence, I think how am I helping people to the next level? Because I don't actually think it's all about like, am I influencing people um, to do what I want them to do? Because that's something completely separate. You know what I mean? So a lot of times with leaders, it's like you're influencing because you want something out of someone. Whereas I think it's something to be said about influencing people for what they want to do, not what I want them to do. So, for example, on my team, I have a talent advisor, I have a people ops manager. I've asked them, like, what is it you want? Like, do you want to stay here? And I'm of no illusion. I do not believe in the, like, you're going to come here and you're going to stay here forever. In fact, I think that's detrimental. So, one of the things I have very open discussions with my team on what do you want here and how can I help you get to where you want to be? Because you shouldn't stay here forever. Like, I don't actually believe in 100% retention rates. Like, I actually think that's detrimental. So, one of the things that we do at Refine Labs is we say, you're going to come here, you're going to get better, and then you're going to move on and you're going to get in a higher position. So, it's that we're of no illusion that you're going to come here and you're going to stay here forever. No, no, no. You're going to come here, you're going to get better. We say that iron sharpens iron. So you're going to come, you're going to work with the best. And when you leave, you are going to leave in a higher position than where you came from. So that's what I think about being influential.
Amazing. I think what you said about being influential in terms of what the person wants to achieve and not what you want to achieve, I think that is very, you know, um, different than what a lot of leaders might say or what we've experienced in the past. And so I think it's really important to start thinking about moving people to move the pieces. But again, these pieces are, in terms of their career path, in terms of, what matters to them. And then that kind of, I guess, trickles down into results and whatnot across the company. And I wonder, how does being influential shape one's career and consequently the function that that person is involved with at the company?
This is really important in people ops because here's the thing, a lot of people don't trust HR. Like, this is like, go on Twitter and type in don't trust HR. The threads are fire. But
Yeah.
they might hurt your feelings because they have hurt my feelings before. But I say that to say you can have influence and it be for good. So I think it's so important that people trust HR. And I can be very frank and say, I consider myself to be like the anti HR. Like, I actually don't like most people ops people. I just had to say it. I don't trust them. But that's because we have this perception of like, you're here for the business and like, you're not here to advocate for employees unless it's for the business. And so there's something to be said about that thread of like, don't trust them or they are not a part of this group. And I've done everything in my power since I started at Refine Labs to go against that narrative. Like, no, you can actually talk to me. You can vent to me and nobody else will ever know about it. Because a lot of times, you know, you hear like, oh, you can always come to me, but you can come to me, but where is that information going to? So you can actually come
Mm-hmm.
vent to me and I won't tell anybody else. I'm not going to go tell your manager. So that's one, is building that trust up. But you can have trust with people, but you have to put it in action. So when people tell you something, you have to do something about it. This comes in with like employee engagement surveys. I can't tell you how many employee engagement surveys I have filled out. And I knew, because I was in HR, that like, what
Mm-hmm.
are y'all gonna do about this? I want action. And so why ask people for information if you're not gonna do anything with it? So we have like a quick turnaround. We do employee engagement surveys. Within 2 weeks, they will know the survey results and they will know what I plan to do about it. So I give a full description in an all hands meeting where it's literally an all hand meeting just about employee engagement. And I say, this is what I'm going to do. And I commit to do it by this date. And then there will be a follow up meeting. Because I don't just talk about it. Like, I want to see some action. Because a lot of times it's like, you know, in theory, we're gonna increase our diversity numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Where? Show me. So I think it's
Yeah.
just so important, like actually show what you're doing, and that's how you get people's trust.
I love that. And you know what you're talking about with the engagement survey, I'm pretty sure that there's tons of research out there that if you get folks to fill out an engagement survey and there's no action, it actually further demoralizes and you actually end up with even lower disengagement than if you had not asked and probed and set the expectation that we're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
So if you're a company that's low on resourcing or you have some other kind of blockers for whatever reason, you do not have the pathway to make decisions or changes, then you're better off not surveying
Yeah,
your
don't do
people.
it.
Yeah. So I love that you mentioned that there's a 2 week turnaround time. I have an all hands, I lay it all straight, and then there's action and a deadline, right? So that's awesome. And that's leading by example. I know you talk about this a lot on LinkedIn as well, is, you know, show me the action and really challenging some people ops folks to actually, you know, you know, put some initiatives in place rather than, you know, talking about things or being a bit more surface level. I know that recently you posted on LinkedIn about the difference between human resources and people ops. I wonder if you could expand on what that difference is and, you know, how that's shaped over time.
I laugh because, of course, the trolls came for me. Okay, y'all. They wanted me. They wanted me for that post. They're like, how dare you talk about HR? And here's the thing, I think there is a place for HR. I truly think, and especially in large companies, you need compliance. You need someone to partner with legal. You need risk management. What I'm saying is, I don't want to do that. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, give it to someone else. That is not what I want to do in people ops. I want to be focused on employee engagement, employer branding, culture, like actually the
Mhm.
things that I enjoy. Like, those are the things that give me energy. Can I do payroll? Can I do compliance? Yes. Do I want to? Absolutely not. So that is why I think there is a distinction. So, for example, on my team, I have someone that really is in that HR role and she's
Mhm.
doing compliance, she's doing risk management because you need that. But a lot of times we get into this like, oh, that is what HR is. No, it's
Mhm.
not. And it should not be. I'm of a strong believer that like finance, payroll should not sit with HR. That's a finance function. Go over there. Don't put them on my team. You know,
Mhm.
so like, why do we feel like a lot of times I see HR departments where it's like you feel like you want everybody with you? Like, why is everybody sitting under HR? Like, when that shouldn't be the function. So, my strong stance is separate it out. If you're doing finance, you need to be with the finance team. If you're doing like risk compliance, I actually think you should sit with legal. I
Mhm.
don't want you at my table, period.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because then it's almost at odds sometimes. And, you know, the people that are influencing
Yeah.
your hiring managers, your leadership, your engagement, all of that. I think there's something to be said there that you said really well. So, if anyone wants to check out Jessica's LinkedIn profile and go back to that post, I think it was a really great one. I also wanted to ask you about, you know, just thinking about talent in general as a function, when you think about how it's been viewed in the past and changes that you've seen today, just expanding on that and the evolution of talent as a function.
Yeah, so a good example of this is on my team, I have a talent advisor, and I strategically said her title is talent advisor because we are not here to take orders. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to establish upfront as the hiring manager, you don't come over here with this list of fairy tales. No, no, we will be pushing back. She is here to advise you on what talent do you need? When do you need them? When do you need to start the process? So I wanted her title to be talent advisor to go ahead and set us up that like, no, she's not here to just find this magical person that you want. No, we're not going to do that. So she's going to be a part of like, you're going to do an intake call with her. So basically putting the control back on us that we are going to control the hiring process from start to finish. As a hiring manager, we invite you in, we want your input, but you are not running the process. So even switching that dynamic of like, we're not order takers, we're not here to like, oh, this is what you want and we're going to give it to you. No, actually, let's push back. Like, why do you feel like you need this one bullet point? So recently we had
Mm-hmm.
a job description that mentioned something about like, you need to know about the company. And of course, we push back. Well, like, why? Why do you need to know about the company? Like, can't we teach you those things? So even pushing back
Mm-hmm.
on what's mandatory, what's the criteria to work here versus like what's a nice to have. And a lot of times we fuse those together thinking that you have to have something when you actually don't. So I think that dynamic, the changing dynamic of like, no, we're going to own recruitment and what that means here, and you're a part of the process, but you're not going
Mm-hmm.
to. Um, in fact, I have the final sign off on job descriptions, not the hiring manager. I want your input. Give me what you have, and then I will sign off on it.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So you really have ownership
Yes.
over the process end to end, and you're being that advisor. You're coaching your team to be advisors and not order takers, which is so difficult, right? I think as much as we keep hearing about the shift over the years, there's still some struggles,
Oh yeah.
especially with certain hiring managers that don't get it, and having to, do that push and pull. I wonder if there's anyone in the room that has a question around that, if you might be facing a struggle that we can unpack and get some of Jessica's wisdom on. I'm having a look at the chat here, and I see that Brandy had a good comment around people don't have survey fatigue, they have inaction fatigue. That is
Yeah,
powerful.
that's a good one.
That is a good one. And Chantal, you are a real jewel to the PNC landscape, Jessica. Wow,
Thank you. Hi.
love that. But yeah, I just wanted to see if anyone has questions for Jessica. Please do add them to the chat or raise your hand, and I'll that we can have you hop off mute and have a bit of engagement. Okay, I see Kaiden, if you want to hop off mute.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I don't know if the audio is good here because I'm just using like a weird browser right now. But
You're good.
um, okay, cool. So thank you, Jessica. I love like your intro and I love what you're talking about in terms of like setting boundaries with hiring managers. I was just wondering, like, I love setting boundaries with hiring managers, but there's like my title is not like as distinct. Like there's no actually it's like great in the sense that like my supervisor is not like in recruitment. So in a lot of ways, like I do get to set my own boundaries, but that comes with a lot of pushback. So I was just wondering, like I've started to realize that there's ways I can push back on like kind of managing like wages and kind of managing like if we're gonna cover travel and things like that. Do you have like tips to like advocate for like I guess like applicants and like how I can like push forward things like instead of just saying things like, oh, this is industry standard or this is just like what we do because like they tend to like be easy to push back on me when I say that stuff. So I don't know if you have like any specific tips there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So thank you for that. My recommendation, and this is what I tell my team, is like I'm there to get the blockers out of the way. So I basically tell them if like when you're having these conversations, like put me in the conversation, like almost like put me in, coach, like I got you, I'll back you up. So I truly think it has to come from leadership. So for example, I'm definitely not going to say it has all been easy. We definitely still get pushback from hiring managers. And most of the time that pushback then comes to me like, well, why do we have to do this? And I am not above explaining to people the why behind the what, and I kind of over explain so that we can move forward. So that would be my first tip is like your leader, whoever that is, needs to be like you need to feel like they're going to back you up, because if not, you're going to feel like you're on an island. And then second, I know I normally talk in like, okay, this is what other companies are doing. But the way that I've learned to do this strategically is to say, this is what an exact competitor. So don't just like, oh, the industry is doing this. Find a competitor. Like we have one at Refine Labs. I found them. I found all of their data. The FBI ain't got nothing on me. I can stop some stuff down. So I found all of their data, and that is what I use as a comparison because they are a direct competitor. So that would definitely be my advice as well.
Okay. Oh my God, thank you so much. That's actually very helpful. So I will like start using that soon. Thank you.
Amazing. So I see that Brandy has a question in the chat, and it goes, Jessica, how have you navigated balancing saying what you know to be true with navigating how you may have perceived to be the voice of your current org?
That's a good one. Listen, Brandy, I'm still on the edge, girl. Like, no, I say that to say it definitely is a balancing act. From the very beginning, so from my very first conversation in the interview process, I was very, very direct and open about like my style and like this is how I want to present myself. I even talked about LinkedIn because I have once worked for a previous organization that basically in so many words, just wanted to censor what I said on LinkedIn and basically told me I needed to stop posting. And so from the beginning, I asked them, I want to post what I want to post. I don't want to run it by anybody. The things that I'm saying are things that are my own opinion. And is this okay? Because if not, then you probably should not have me sign this contract. So I think from the beginning, I set a tone of like, this is the expectation. And also my CEO and I, if you actually go look up Chris Walker, he says way more radical stuff than I do. I'm just saying it about people ops. You know what I mean? So he and I are actually in line with the things that we say. He's saying it about marketing, which is his expertise, and I'm saying it about people ops. However, I think the gist is that people just don't expect people ops to say anything. So now when I talk about the things that I think, they're like, oh, you can't say that. He's doing the same thing. He's just doing it about marketing. So for me, the balance has been I had to find an employer that would allow me to be me. And I definitely have workplaces where that was not the case and it was never going to be the case. And I knew that and they knew that. And I had to leave. So it definitely is a hard one because if you have an employer that basically, I've seen employers write out statements for people and be like, oh, this is what you should put on LinkedIn. No, I'm not participating. Like, I'm not writing that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice is to find an organization that can give you the space to speak your truth and to set that expectation up front and to find leaders like your CEO, for example, that are as bold or, in line with your values. And then you don't have to kind of be doing this awkward dance, right? So I thank you for that. And then I see that Kenda has a question in the chat. How do you balance being the listener, confidant, and then addressing the issue? So my CEO wants to know who is saying what before making any changes. Kenda, do you want to hop off mute and expand on that?
Sure. This was going back, Jessica, to what you were saying earlier about, being that safe space where people can talk to you and vent. I sort of I'm trying to be like that, but I then sort of get a lot of, who's saying that? Why should we do anything about it? Tell me more. And so it just, I don't want to then break that confidence, and I'm struggling with that.
No, that's a good one. And I definitely have been there before. It's a hard one to be like, I want you to tell me something, but I want to do something about it. So normally in the conversation, I ask people very upfront, like, is this a vent session or is this something you want? Do you want me to take action? Because it's a different level of the conversation if you want me to do something about it. Like if you just want to vent, and I've had people come vent and then they come back and they say, actually, I want you to do something about this. So sometimes it's giving them the time to decide, like I've said something and it's off my chest, but now I want some action. So I think one is like kind of setting that stage up front with the person. Like if you just want to talk, but also I tell people, depending on what you say, if it's like harmful or like you plan to harm yourself or something like that, and I've had those situations, I will take action no matter what I said, because I want you to be safe, or I want whoever we're talking about to be safe. So that's one, setting expectations. But two, I have just flat out told my CEO I won't tell you who said things, but the way around this I've learned is to get more than one consensus. So one of the things that has come up for us is people wanted like a certain benefit specifically around mental health. And I talk freely about mental health. I talk about my own anxiety and depression and things that I've dealt with. So employees feel very, very open to come to me and talk about mental health, which like warms my heart because I want them to have somebody to talk to, but also does put me in a situation where they're talking to me about like medication and therapy and things of that nature. And so when I went to my CEO and my leadership team and said like, hey, we need to increase mental health benefits, I didn't say like, oh, it's this many people, but I said I've talked to enough people to know that we have burnout happening, people are overstressed, and they are going to leave. So I basically tied the whole story to this is what's happening. Not going to tell you who, not going to tell you how, but this is what we need to do about it. So yeah, I think definitely it's hard to push back on a CEO, especially when they want to know who. But the way I've done that is in numbers. So if it's more than one person, then you can just say, well, it was more than one person, and I don't want to break their confidence. But it's hard. I want to just acknowledge that, because when a CEO is pushing you, they're pushing you for a reason.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you for that. If anyone else has questions, please add them to the chat or raise your hand. Oh, I see. Oh, I hope I'm saying your name right. Shandaya?
Shandia, it's okay. It's
Shandia.
very
Okay.
very
Sorry about
simple.
that.
No, it's okay, not a problem. And thank you for even trying to attempt that. It's not the easiest to digest sometimes. But the question that I had is, how do you hold management accountable for feedback that you receive and you have to take action? I think that is my biggest area of struggle, is because I'll get the feedback, I'll get the buy-in to be able to, in order to, or the confirmation, I should say, in order to share the feedback. But then holding management accountable to the solution is like so hard, because like that's where the pushback happens.
Yeah.
Not our CEO. My CEO like literally will empower me to do anything. It's management. And yeah, unfortunately, like sometimes I feel like I can go into it with this bitchy attitude of just like, I'm the people advocate and this is the issue and we need to solve for it. And I don't want to hold authority by being a bitch. I want to hold authority by coming in with the facts and saying like, we need to have a solution in place right now, like right away.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is so evident, because I was on a podcast recently and I talked about leadership teams and I described them as a gang. Like they are their own gang. So you have the people, you have the employees, and then you have the leader gang. Like they are their own clique most of the times. And a lot of times the leadership team has their own culture. So they have their own culture, they have their own ways of discussing things. And so holding them accountable is the hardest part, because let's say for an employee, you can do a PIP, you can do all of these things. I've rarely ever seen a PIP on a leadership team, especially a senior leadership team. Like it's really hard, specifically because the CEO most of the time is every CEO I've ever dealt with is conflict averse. They talk a great game, but when you get them one-on-one, they're like, I don't want to say that. You say it, Jessica. So I've been in those situations where they're like, I'm going to just sit here and you talk, Jessica. And it's like, but you're the CEO, like say something. So I think the leadership gang is like one avenue, because holding one of them accountable, to your point, the CEO can empower you, but my stance is it has to come from like performance reviews. And I don't believe in having performance reviews that are not tied to money, because that's when you see action. So I feel very, very strongly about performance reviews need to be tied to money. And if you're not hitting certain goals, you need to not get money then. So for example, we have some very strong D&I goals. We want them to be tied to money, because when your money is impacted, things magically happen that you said you couldn't do before, but now you can. Now you figured out how to make it work. So also I have found that one-on-ones, like I have actually gone to a leader before and said like, hey, you're not, I'm getting a lot of feedback from the employee engagement survey about your leadership style. Like, what can we do about it? And this leader was not having it. They absolutely pushed back and said it was no, it's the team. They are the problem. They are underperformers. But mind you, they had not rated them as underperformers, but now they're underperformers because they don't like you. So having that honest conversation started it. So, because I always want to give the person a chance, like, you never know. Maybe something is going on and this leader is trying. So having that conversation with them first, but also knowing that you're going to have to back it up with some action. So, for example, if this person is not able to be like disciplinary or like have a conversation with them from the CEO, it's not going to work. And it's so hard because the CEO is not going to want to do it without you. Yeah.
All the eye rolls.
I know. I get it.
Thank you for, being very candid about that experience that you've had in the past. And also, Jessica, I really like what you said about tying performance reviews to money and how things magically start to happen when there's money involved, right? When goals are tracking towards monetary value there. And yeah, I just wanted to again call out for anyone else who has questions, raise your hand, add them to the chat. We'll be taking a look. Meanwhile, I have a couple of other questions. So Jessica, I know that all of us are probably wondering this. What keeps you motivated?
I'm the epitome. If you go look in the dictionary next to overachiever, there I am. Like just there. Like it's just me. Like so I think for me I am motivated because I want to, it's not about being the best to me. I want to be a true employee advocate. That's what I would say. So I will do whatever it takes for employees. I've done some things like I definitely had a past organization where I was the director, but I called somebody and like told them like, hey, you should ask for more money. I was willing to do that. And I was basically putting my job on the line to tell them like, hey, you should ask me for more money. And I cannot tell you this, but I'm going to call you and tell you this. You see what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, I am willing to do what I think is right, even if the employer would not think it was right. So if I look back at the employer, they would have been pissed that I told her to ask for more money. But I did what I thought was right, because if she would not have asked, she would have signed an offer letter and she would have come in probably $20,000 less than all of her peers that were male because she just didn't ask. And it didn't sit right with me. So that's like a perfect example of I took a risk. Like I truly took a risk calling her and being like, hey, you should ask for more money. But I did it anyway.
Oh, I see in the chat as well. So, I think this is a situation where I've also been in a similar boat, having to kind of coach present employees at a company to negotiate when they're getting promoted, even though, it was like a lateral move. Those are still times to ask for more money. And so I really appreciate leaders such as yourself that have integrity and are values driven and really care about your principles and live your principles. And doesn't matter what, let's say your manager or your leader would have to say about it at the time, because you're driven by your values. And that's ultimately, what has led to your success and is continuing to lead to that. So I think you're a prime example of how following your values and leading with integrity, is a recipe for success. So I
followed my heart. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, even if I look back and if the next day I would have gotten fired, I would not have cared, because I knew I did the right thing. And I would not have been able to sleep at night knowing that I just hired this woman, and I say I advocate for women and I believe in like professionals of color and all of this stuff. But where's the action? So I took an action to say, I'm going to put myself on the line and I'm going to tell you, you're about to be underpaid by $20,000. Ask for more money. And when I told my fiance, he was like, say what now? You did what? And I was like, I don't care. I did it. I don't care.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I remember there was that tweet floating around, recently, or I guess it's been a couple of months now. You probably know what I'm talking about, where a recruiter had mentioned, that the salary that someone on the phone was asking for was way lower, and they hired that person didn't even bother telling them that the budget was way higher. And, you know, again, that's like something that I wonder, like how some folks can sleep at night knowing that they have a higher budget and they're like lowballing, especially when it's a female candidate. And we know that there's a gender pay gap, and we know that these issues continue to fester because simply recruiters and leaders, you know, oftentimes will gatekeep. So I appreciate that change, you know, that you and others in this room are creating for so many people.
Wait, I also have to say another trick to this is
Yeah.
if you're offering somebody a job, I've done this before too, where I was like, okay, so what are your salary expectations? And let's say the person said like 75. I will straight up be like, oh, I think I heard you wrong. Did you say 100? Okay, great. I'm gonna write that down.
I love that.
Like, oh no, we're not doing that. So yeah, do whatever it takes.
I love that. Yeah, I think, you know, we have so much power as that entry point into the company that it's important for us to know what our role is. And oftentimes, maybe just sharing the budget rather than asking, what are your expectations? Yeah. So what do you think the talent professionals can work on when it comes to becoming influential? You know, we're talking about the power that we already have, but how do you use that power in an organization?
There is a lot of power in being the first person that somebody interacts with at a company. So if you think about your role in talent or people ops, to be the first person someone's interacting with, you're setting the tone, one. And then kind of like what we just talked about, you have the ability to get this person where they need to be because you know what the range is. So if you say the range is 80 to 100, why are you pushing people to 80? Why are you doing that? Like, it's not coming out of your paycheck. So I get really offended when people are like, well, no, the budget was 80. Like, I'm going to find people at 80. Why? What is it doing for you? Why do you want that for somebody? So there's power in getting people financially where they need to be. So it's a lot of power in that, and people will be very, very grateful, specifically if they don't know the budget. So at Refine Labs, we post it clear. It's on the job description. This is the salary range. We don't play around. Like, it's everywhere. It's on the website. It's on the job description. In the first conversation, we will bring it up. So there's no question about what the range is and what our expectations are from the very beginning. And I think more companies need to do that. And so I'm very excited about like California, about other like states, you know, that are saying, no, put it out there. And what's going to happen, which we know to be true, is a lot of companies are about to be like, oh, wait, because you're not paying people properly and you know it. And so now you got to put it out there. And here's the thing, a lot of times when you start posting salaries, your internal people are going to see that as well. So that's when the rubber meets the road, because if you're saying this is what you're offering externally, but your internal people don't make the same thing, make it make sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I do know some companies have started to top up salaries of their employees, realizing that they're not at market rate. And in order to hire new folks, they first need to look at internal equity before dishing out the dollars externally and creating, you know, those types of discrepancies. So for sure, make it make sense. I love that line.
We have a hand raised, by the way.
Oh yeah, you're right. So we have Lana, if you want to hop off mute and ask your question.
Hi, thank you, Jessica, for coming to speak with us today. I wanted to stack on to the previous question about compensation. So how do you think about mixes of compensation? So if you look at, because I deal with that a lot out here in the Bay Area, where compensation is rarely just cash. What's like a creative way to think about, for example, like as you're looking at releveling people or giving people bumps for engagement, and tying it to performance, how do you think of those mixes of like stock, especially these days when like I think most people want cash, and the mix of bonus, cash upfront, stock, other type things?
No, I think that's a good question. And one of the things I really, really am a fan of is total comp statements. So literally laying it all out, like this is what you're getting as a base. This is your bonus. This is what it's based on. I think those statements like put it all in one place, specifically if you're going to put in their benefits. So I've seen it where the top line is like, you know, it might be equity, it might be based on I've seen it based on like the finance numbers. So if you're gonna get a percentage once you meet this bonus. So I think that puts it all in perspective. However, to your point, like a lot of people nowadays are like, no, give me the money. Like I've dealt with equity in my past, and I'm like, no, 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 put it in my check. I don't want no equity. And that's just my stance now, just because I've dealt with it before, and it's just such a hassle when it comes to taxes and all of that stuff. So people now are just saying, no, I want the money. And I think there's something to be said for that, especially in startups. So where I'm at right now, I'm in a startup, early stage company. We have 100 employees. We're not at that point where we're doing like equity or anything of that nature. However, we've talked about like profit sharing. Like what would that look like at the end of the year once we make certain numbers, sharing the profit with employees. So I definitely think there's a way to get creative, but what I would do specifically in like job postings is I would list it out. I've seen that before where they're listing out this is the base, this is the percentage of like other things that are available that will be discussed in the package. Because what then happens, I know a lot of companies that want to put a base that's a little bit lower, knowing that they're going to give equity, and that kind of deters some candidates because that's below where they want to be, unless you tell them they might get equity too. So transparency, even when you don't have all the answers, because I would even be more inclined to look at something that said this is your base in equity percentage range, rather than being like, oh, if this is just the base with nothing else, I'm not interested.
Yeah, that makes sense. Would you sort of advise, and sorry, I'll just like stack this on if that's okay. It's just like, would you advise for like early stage startups, like Series B stage, to focus mainly on cash compensation versus giving, you know, stock or
I would.
availability? Yeah.
But just because most people nowadays are saying like, well, you're not far enough along to want the stock. You know what I mean? Like we're not talking Amazon, you know? So they're starting to push back and be like, well, no, because how, and also like the vesting process is also like getting way, way more complicated. So a lot of people are saying like, well, especially in an early stage, you think, oh, I'm only going to be here 2 to 3 years. They're starting to calculate what that actually means in dollars and be like, well, that's not enough. You know, I'd rather have the money up front. So yeah, I think focusing on the base is the way to go.
Okay, thank you.
Or unless you're going to do golden handcuffs and like price people out, because I have been at a company before where we specifically price people out, where if they left, they would have to take a pay cut. So that is another compensation strategy that a lot of companies take. Word to the wise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. All right. I wonder, Jessica, when you think about where talent is headed next and where you see it headed in the near term and long term, what are some trends that you're going to predict for us here?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was talking to my niece, who's like love of my life, she's 21, and so she's very much in this like, you know, TikTok era. And so last night we were talking, and I was like, "Oh, you're so TikTok influenced." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, "You get all your information from TikTok. You like literally like career advice, college advice." She like is like, "Well, I see it on TikTok," and I'm like, who are these other children? What do they know? You know, but that's what I think that is something to think about from like employee experience and where people are getting information is like they are very much influenced. If you think about this whole quiet quitting, it started on TikTok. So they are influencing like terminology and the ways that people are showing up in the workplace. So don't sleep on it. Like that's one of the things I'm like, let's not, I know we're like, even me sometimes when she's talking, I'm like very like, ugh, little girl, like dismissive. But when I think about it, I'm like, no, like her peers are in the workplace and they're definitely talking about quiet quitting. They're talking about work-life balance. They're very into mental health, which are all amazing things, but they are pushing us further than we've been pushed before. So there's something to think about there on how are we making sure employees are engaged when we have a new generation that's decided that they don't want the new house. They don't want the picket white fence. They don't want the nicest cars in the neighborhood. Like that's not what motivates them. So then what are you going? They are more worried about culture. What is your company doing for the environment? So like corporate social responsibility, like these are things they are interested in. And if you think that you're going to like throw something at them and then that's going to make them stay, that's not realistic. So I'm also I'm a big fan of job hoppers. I'm a job hopper. Okay. I'm the president of the job hopper club. So I'm a big fan of if it's not working out, go somewhere else. And I think that is the way of the future, specifically with remote employees, because you don't have to move anymore. You don't have to, reset your whole life. You could start a new job living in California, working in New York, and it's fine. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to move your life. So I think the length of service is one interesting thing, but also the way that people look at their job. Like they're not going to work and thinking this is my life. I definitely have been in a space in my early career where I was like, this is who I am and this is a part of my identity. When I say that to my niece, she's like, well, what? Ew. Like she like that is not something she has ever thought about. She wants to go to work to pay to travel. She's not interested in like her work being her life. And it's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah, I think there's been huge cultural shifts and it's easy to ignore. It's tempting to want to ignore it. But as you mentioned, this entire generation is part of the workforce now, and, we can't sleep on it. And I think a lot of it is actually also unearthing a lot of how perhaps we feel and might just, have had to suck it up because we were taught that that's the way you do it. And so I think it's just, blowing the lid off of how a lot of us already feel. And I love what you mentioned about being the president of job hopping. And if something's not working out, move on to something better. So I think for anyone who is either job seeking right now or worried about job hoppers, if you're interviewing somebody, is to just get a little bit curious about, okay, this is somebody who clearly knows what they want and went after that, right? So that's really important there. And I wonder, we have a couple of minutes left if there's anyone else who's got some thoughts or questions while we have
I have one more comment. As you were talking about it's almost like our generation, like I know for me, I'm a millennial. I think like, well, I did this and I worked crazy hours and and I climbed my way to the top. But then I think about my niece and it's like, well, because I suffered, you have to suffer. So it's like this whole mentality of because I did it, you have to do it too. No, I don't believe that. Like, I don't believe she should have to work crazy hours like I did to climb her way to the top. And to be quite honest, that generation, they don't even care about the top. Like they're like, I'm a leader right now. They don't care about titles. So it's very different mindset of like the generational difference is real when you think about like, they don't care about titles. Whereas I feel like millennials, we will climb, honey. We will claw to the top. We want it bad. And when we get there, then it's like arrival fallacy. Like you look around like, is this all it is? But it's something to be said about that. But yeah, I think I suffered, so you must suffer is such a like a cycle that they're not buying into it anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And something that came to mind as we were talking about all of this is, you just did such a great job of describing the future of work without using that buzzword. So thank you for that. It's like we hear a lot about these buzzwords, but what's actually behind the curtain? What are we talking about? What are the opinions, values, some of the practical things here? And so yeah, I just want to kind of highlight that, when it comes to getting career advice on TikTok or really thinking about working to live rather than living to work, all of these things, there's a number of reasons behind why we're here at this point. But yeah, it's just something not to sleep on. And again, what you mentioned around just because I suffered, you have to, I think, employers that see it that way are just not going to be able to attract, let alone retain talent in this day and age.
Oh, no. And also, I even think when I wrote about it this morning on LinkedIn, I talked about with or without a title. You can be a leader without a title. And I think it's very important to remember that as we're like thinking about org design and all of those things, because the next generation, they are very mindful of titles that they think are important to them. And it might not be the same as the business title. So I actually had someone recently join and they were like, listen, I want the job, but I don't want this title. Can we change my title? So they're not even negotiating salary. They're negotiating titles. And we're like, well, yeah, I mean, if you want this title, that's fine. But I've seen that more in the last 2 years where people are negotiating their title rather than their salary. And I think that's just a new trend that I hadn't seen before. Like people, which mind you, I still advocate negotiate everything. I'm a big proponent of everything's on the table and I don't care what they tell you. I have been in the back end, in the HR side of people negotiating everything and they got it. And they would say, but if the policy says, I don't care what the policy says, negotiate everything. Everything's on the table. Don't let them fool you.
Yeah, I think there are so many creative ways to negotiate. And so I love that you're kind of reiterating everything is on the table there, regardless of what a policy might say. And really hammering in that point around leadership is a trait, not a title. And I saw that on your post that, you know, leader with or without the title, welcome to this session. And yeah, I think a lot of folks are now realizing that you are a leader with or without the title. And I think titles are important in terms of being visible and being part of, you know, what is your brand. And of course, your brand is a really big part of your influence. So I can see why a lot of people are negotiating that title. I guess, you know, some people say that they don't care about titles, but what's your idea or opinion?
Let me be very clear.
Yeah.
Let me be very clear. I care about my title. Okay. I was clawing. Okay. And my next title would be Chief People Officer. I'm putting it in the universe. I'm putting it in my aura. I care about my title because I have clawed for 10 years and I care about it. And so kudos to those people that don't care. I want to be like y'all when I grow up, but I care. So I just want to let me say that. Like I truly care. And I saw a comment in the chat about negotiating titles. Absolutely. It is a real thing. You can negotiate your title at any time, specifically in the hiring process. Once you've got an offer, go back and say, you know what, I thought about it, and based on the conversations we've had and the job description, I actually think XYZ title is a better fit. It works. I've seen it time and time again.
So really going back to the scope of responsibility and really outlining that as the reason that this title matches the scope better. Makes sense.
Yeah. I've actually done it before. I changed my title before, and it was the title was going to be Senior Manager of HR, and I got it changed to Director of People. So and it was literally just me saying nothing else was changed, but I wanted the title. And I tell people this all the time, get the title, because what will happen when you get the title is that your next role will be even more elevated. So take the title, if nothing else. Now, I'm never an advocate for like taking more money or taking less money than you think you deserve. But in some situations, I've had this in my career where I took a lateral move. I didn't get more money, but I got a higher title, and it 100% helped me.
Yeah, I think sometimes it kind of feels like you're taking a step back to take 2 steps forward. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is kind of like that branding game, right? And today's discussion has primarily been around influence. And, you know, I guess if you have some thoughts around influence and your brand, right? So your personal brand and being influential, you know, being online, and like, I think the whole terminology around being an influencer and like it's becoming a bit more normalized. But if you wanted to tie those 2 ideas around your brand and your influence, what would you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's funny because somebody recently referred to me as like LinkedIn Jessica, and I thought it was so funny. I was like, what are you saying? Like, oh yeah, like you're an influencer. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'll take that title. But I do think it's very important for you to have your own employer brand. So for example, I have my own brand outside of Refine Labs. So I've made my own presence on LinkedIn. I post basically every single day. And what that's done is it's opened up opportunities. Like, for example, I'm going to be a guest lecturer at Georgetown University. Let me be honest, I couldn't even get into Georgetown, okay? So, but now I'm going to go lecture their students on like people ops and how to do all of these things. So one, it opens doors for you that would have not been open before. They found me. So Georgetown found me because of my LinkedIn content. Literally, that's how they found me. So that's one thing. And then 2, you want to have a brand outside of your job. So to my point earlier about the younger generation, like they are branding themselves outside of their job title, because let's be honest, I already talked about I'm the queen of job hopping. I'm not going to stay in one job forever. Like that has never been the case, and it's not going to be. So what is my brand outside of the company? I love my current job, but if I didn't, it would be easy for me to leave, because I now have a brand on LinkedIn where people reach out to me all the time. Every week I get somebody reaching out to me about a job. Again, not interested. I hit them with, I have a copy and paste now that's really like, thank you so much. Here's some people in my network that are looking, if you want me to make an introduction.
Mhm.
But I say that to say, if you have a brand, then you can carry that with you no matter where you work. So now my brand is, I'm the unapologetic, say whatever I want about HR, but I will get things done. I believe in action. So I now have startups that don't have anyone in HR that are reaching out to me and saying, we would love you to be our person. And if not, can you consult for us? So having a brand, there's money in having a brand. Because now I have my own consultancy and I'm like, yeah, you want me to come work with you? How much you willing to pay? I'll write some stuff. Like I'll write some policies.
Yeah. I think there's so much power these days with having a brand, and a lot of that power, you definitely can cash in on that. It attracts opportunities too. So it pays to be seen. It pays to be heard. It pays to write and to share your thoughts. And you do it so well, and you do it unapologetically, which I find so inspiring. I think we're almost headed towards time. So what I would love, Jessica, is if you could share ways that listeners can connect with you. I think a good amount of us are probably already following you, if not connected on LinkedIn, but for those that are new, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I just put my LinkedIn in the chat. So LinkedIn is one. I also have my own podcast. So I would love for you guys to listen. It's called The Talent Destination. It's me and my COO, Megan, and we talk about all things talent, how to become a talent destination. And I want to distinguish, when I say talent destination, it means you're going to come somewhere, you're going to get better, and then you're going to be better off because you were there. So we don't believe in this. You're going to come work for us and you're going to stay here forever. So that's one thing. And like I said, I'm on LinkedIn basically all day, every day. So that's the best way to contact me. I literally have LinkedIn up all the time.
Yeah, if there was an equivalent of speed dial, there would be speed post.
I'm like,
yeah.
out of my DMs, that's probably the best way to get to me.
Amazing. Well, thank you for such an insightful conversation, and for all your questions as well, everyone in the room who had questions, and for being bold to hop off mic and to share some of your real life work struggles. It's been great learning from you all and from Jessica, and I hope to see you all at the next event. So we have another event with the hiring community on Friday, and I'll be adding that to the session recording email that you'll be receiving soon. So you can always catch the replay in case you had to hop out and hop back in. But yeah, just wanted to say thanks again and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you guys. This was great. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.